Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about Trails in the Sky, second chapter, which I finished about 30 minutes ago, giving it a little bit of time to settle, and I feel like I'm ready to talk about it. I have a lot I want to say, and all of it will be with spoilers. So let me say instead, to start off with, if you have seen me talk about the first game, got interested, want to know if the second game's worth playing, absolutely it is. Play the first game, play the second game. I can tell you right now, Trails in the Sky, second chapter, is going to be in my top 25 games of all time somewhere. I don't know where I'm putting it yet, but it's definitely going to make top 25. I love this game so much. Like I said, I have a lot I want to say. So we're going to move straight into spoilers. From this point on, I will be talking spoilers for the first game and for the second game. So please keep that in mind. If you are a person that doesn't care about spoilers, by all means, continue watching. If you're a person who does, pause the video, close the video, whatever you got to do. Come back to it after you've beaten the game. But let's talk about Trails in the Sky, second chapter. So, as I'm sure you'd hear in any other review, right? It picks up pretty much, and when I say pretty much, it picks up exactly where the first game left off. You have the cliffhanger with Joshua, and I'll come back to that in a minute because there's a really cool thematic parallel between the end of the first game and the end of the second game. You have that cliffhanger and how good that is, and you start the game off as Estelle trying to come to terms with everything, and just not. The entire prologue of Estelle goes back home, and Joshua's not there. She runs into Kevin Graham, and we're gonna talk about Kevin Graham for sure because I have some thoughts about Father Kevin. But that whole sequence of her just telling herself, "No, it's fine. He'll be at home. He won't have run away. He'll be at home," and he's just not because he ran away. He went to go try and deal with all this on his own, and that resolves so well too. And we'll talk about that too. Everything about Estelle and Joshua's relationship in this game just gets better. I have so much I want to say about it. I don't know. I cannot decide. I've recorded this video like 3 times already now because I cannot decide whether I want to go chapters or whether I want to go characters. So we're going to stick with chapters and we'll deviate as we need to. But that entire prologue is really, really solid. It does have its issues for me. I think that once you get done with the opening section of Estelle being upset and not exactly understanding what's happening and knowing it and denying it because she doesn't want to admit that he's gone, then that whole sequence is great. But when she gets to the training camp, I do think things slow down a little bit. This is your tutorial, but you don't really need one if you played the first game. And I wish there was an option to just be like, the tutorial's not bad, don't get me wrong, but when they're like, well, yeah, and you can get your orbments or you can get some food, whichever you think's more important for you. And it's okay. That entire sequence is solid, right? The core theme of that is let's set up Estelle for the rest of this game. Of I'm going to be more prepared. She's going to be more prepared and ready to face the things that she's going to have to go up against to try and get Joshua back. And setting her determination, right? That's what that prologue chapter is for. And I think it does that really well. I do think it drags on a little bit longer than I'd like it to, but I also feel like part of that is the strength of this game, where for the entire first half of this game, I'm going, yeah, this is great. This is really cool. I want to get to Joshua. Estelle needs to get to Joshua. I'm doing all the side quests. Don't get me wrong. I'm doing all of them. But I'm getting Estelle to Joshua as soon as physically possible. And I feel like the prologue is the part that kind of suffers a little bit from that. Because that's what I want more than anything during that prologue is just to get Estelle back to Joshua. And that's a ways off, you know? Then you get the walk through the region again. You get to go through La Burle again, which is really cool. I like the fact that they give you options and go, hey, do you want to bring Agate? I can't believe I forgot his name for a second there. Or do you want to bring Shara? And I went with Agate because I got a lot of Shara in the first game and not a lot of Agate in the first game. And I feel like that was the right choice. I definitely got endeared to Agate a whole lot more than I was before. But I really like the way that it's, yeah, you know, you got to do some more stuff. You got to go around solving problems. Because I know some people might say, well, you did that in the first game. Why are we doing it again in the second game? It's the difference now, right? In the first game, Estelle had Joshua, and Joshua had Estelle, and both of them could depend on each other, and both of them were a strength for each other. But now you're going back to those places you've been before, and you don't have Joshua with you anymore. And the NPCs recognize you, and they recognize Joshua's not with you. And Estelle has to tackle these problems with the bracer that came with her, either Cher or Agate, kind of letting her choose how to deal with it, which I think is really cool. She comes into her own in a really cool way. I'm going to tell you right now, Estelle jumped straight to the top of the charts for my favorite RPG protagonist. I love Estelle, and I loved her so much in the first game. She's even better in this one. There's a whole sequence on the Glorious that I can't wait to get to talk about. I really like this, though. As you go around the different areas and you clash with each of the enforcers that you're going to be facing throughout the course of the game, not in straight-up fights with all of them, but in like a, hey, this is kind of what we're doing, but we're not going to explain everything. It's set up, right? And that's what these chapters are, really, is set up. And I do think these chapters could have been a little bit shorter, but I was excited to go back to some of these places, you know? When I got to Ruan, one of the first things I did was go check on the Ravens. Just little by little, as I went through these areas, I'm going to talk about them more in the later chapters, in Land of Chaos. But getting to see these places again from this extra layer of, hey, it's Estelle. Joshua's not here. And people asking, where's that boy that was with you before? Or people that knew him going, hey, where's Joshua? Oh, man, I can't wait to talk about the school. I'm going to tell you right now, this review is going to be the most rambly of them all because I adore this game. And the more I like something, the worse I am at getting my thoughts across about why I like it. I really love, this is a good time to talk about it as any. I really love getting to see the evolution of the series as we go. The party select screen is super cool. Could it be a little bit more stylized? Sure. But the first game didn't have it at all. And so it's really cool to see this like full-on screen that shows you their level, and you get to see the character, and when you add them to the party, they get a line, and it's really cool. Getting the team back together is really, really cool. Getting Olivier back and him coming in at Ruan. Getting to Ruan and figuring out that they're having to elect a new mayor, because of course they are, because we arrested Dalmor at the last game. Just the little touches in the early parts of second chapter that, compared to what happens in the back half, maybe not quite as crazy, but it just cements even more for me how much I love this world. And so the first half of second chapter, in a lot of ways, is just more of first chapter, right? But the second half of second chapter is bonkers, and I love it. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. As we go through, we get more and more world building. We find out more things about Crossbell, find out more things about Erebonia, and eventually it leads to this moment where everything's come to a head. We've been solving problems all across Liberl, dealing with earthquakes, dealing with illusions, dealing with mist. We've been solving all these different issues, right? Trying to shut down another attempted coup. It's been a lot, right? And we get to Bose. And we get Agate's backstory. And I want to talk about Shara's backstory a little bit later. Because we get Agate's backstory. And not only do we get Agate's backstory, but we get to see the Ravenous Orchard get burned down. And it was just this moment where I realized I cared. Not because, well, this is their livelihood. I feel bad for these people. I cared because I knew those characters, you know? When I saw them, it wasn't a question of, hey, do I care about this? It was, oh, I've got to talk to these people. I've got to make sure they're okay. Because I know those people. I did quest for those people in the first game, you know? And it meant so much more to me. And then as you find out more about Ravenous Village and everything happening there, it's really powerful. The way that this game, this series, set the seeds in the first game for a payoff that I never would have seen coming. Who would have thought the orchard would have been important, right? But it was a really powerful scene. We get through everything with Agate, and again, I'm going to talk about the characters after I get through the brief rundown of my thoughts per chapter. Because, oh boy. Again, these early chapters are kind of still just first chapter, right? It's find out the issues, take on your quests, investigate the weird thing going on, get to the end of it, fight a boss gets away, right? The enemy gets away. And it's that repeat. But in the middle of all that, we're getting Agate backstory. We're getting Shara backstory. We're getting stuff going on with Chloe and the choices she's going to have to make. We're getting Olivier doing some more stuff that we don't know exactly what's going on there. And that gets explained later. We get Tita and Reen interacting together, which is really interesting. And we'll get into that a little bit later. I think it's really cool to drip feed the story while it feels like you're not. So, like, by the time I got to the halfway point, I think I even said on the podcast a couple weeks ago that I felt like I was almost done because I thought it was going to be more of first chapter. I assumed we would get to the end of the 5 city-states, I guess not city-states, all liberal, but the 5 regions in liberal, and we would reconnect with Joshua, and then we would go to the 3rd game, right? That's what I thought was going to happen. But when you get to the end of your 5th region, it then becomes a very different game. Stuff goes bonkers. The society has gone off its rocker. Again, it almost feels like 2 separate games in the same series, but they're the same game. And I have so much I want to talk about with levels and everything. We'll get there. That changeover into the society's in full swing now. They're moving. It is now time to fight back. As everything changes. So Estelle gets captured. And man, we got to talk about the society attacking everything. The towers. There's so much that happens in this game. You find Kurt, and you investigate that facility. Estelle gets captured, brought on board the Glorious. In the meantime, with all this, Joshua's been working with the Kapua Sky Pirates, and I'll get into them as well. I expected this to be, oh no, and I hate that this was my expectation, but video games have taught me, when the female character gets captured, the male character has to come in to save her. But Estelle breaks her own way out of prison and gets up to the top, and Joshua does wind up coming to help save her. But it very much is still, she was able to fight her way out there, and it's really cool. Where this shines for me, though, is the moment on the beach, right? It's the moment where their ship has crashed, the society's in full swing, things are going really bad, and Joshua tries to leave again. And Estelle basically tells him, don't do that. You're afraid. You're afraid of me dying because you've lost too much. We learned about Hamel. I got to talk about Hamel. Don't leave. We can do this together. And Joshua finally breaks down and cries. And that scene is so powerful. I love that scene so much. Everything to do with that scene is incredible. And I wish I did a Twitter thread, right, for this game, and I didn't take any pictures of this scene because I didn't want to spoil it for people because of how good the scene is. But it is literally that discussion of, hey, you're trying to tackle the world alone, and you cannot do that. You're just going to get yourself killed, or you're going to become an edgelord. Calm down. We'll take it on together. If we're together, we can face anything that comes along. And it's just this really powerful moment for me of Estelle being like, nah, we got this. It doesn't matter what we're up against because we got each other. And realistically, is that good enough? No, probably not. They need other people with them too, right? But this game, just like the first one, has a continuing theme of bonds and the way that people change each other by interacting with them, which is my favorite theme. I've said it many times on this channel. I love bonds. I love inherited will. I love the idea of, hey, this person may not have made it, but their dream lives on in you. And we see that again with Estelle and her mom. And we got to talk about her mom and that incredible scene in the Mistwall. But she wins Joshua back over. Not because she's incredibly physically strong, even though she's very strong, but because she's able to talk to him one-on-one. And it's such a good scene. And from that point on, it's retread, which should be a bad thing, right? On paper, telling me I have to go back through all 5 regions again? No, I don't want to do that, right? Except I do, because the regions are under attack, and I care about these people. I want to protect these people. When I get to the Royal Academy and I find out that it's been taken over, I immediately go into, it doesn't matter what else we got going on right now. We need to save Hans and Jill. We got to protect these people. And just over and over again, you get the great moment with Sting in the Malga Mine. Just over and over again, moments of, hey, we need to help these people. Some of the stuff, it's a little nuts. Like the Elmo Springs one, but I did it because I wanted to help people. It's everything's in chaos. You're attempting to help as many people as you can. I didn't even talk about the dragon yet. I didn't talk about Ragnar yet. I told you this one's going to be even more rambly than usual because the more I like something, the harder time I have explaining why I like it, because I default to it's so cool, it's so good. And so I'm doing my best to attempt to explain it. Because if I tried to write a script for this, it would take hundreds of hours and multiple revisions before I was happy with it. And I want to play the rest of these games before the end of the year. But everything about this chapter, where you have to go back through the areas and reconnect their phones, and you can't use arts, so everything got way harder. It's so cool. I really loved this chapter. And to the point where it was like 2 a.m. and I was like, okay, I have to stop because I know I'm almost done and there's going to be cutscenes and I need to go to bed. I loved that chapter so much. And right after that, we get into the reveals, right? With Olivier is actually Prince Olivert. We get to meet One-Eyed Zex. We get to see the tanks, and Arabonia comes in, and then it's, hey, let's go. We're flying up there. We're flying up onto, I didn't even talk about the city. We're flying to the Liberal Arc, and we're going to take the fight straight to the Society. Everything from there is this really cool sprint as you're exploring this ancient civilization with a bunch of extremely cool technology. But you want to get to the tower because you want to fight them, and you fight each and every one of them, and it's so cool. And then you get straight into the battle with Lowe and straight into the battle with Wiseman. Oh, it's so good. So let's talk characters. Because from this point on, the only way that I can have any structure is to talk characters. Let's talk villains first. Because I feel like we kind of already knew who our main cast was, and then the villains got to shine in this game, and then Kevin Graham got to shine in this game, and Agate got his backstory included, Zen got some more of his backstory included. But starting with the villains, Phantom Thief Blue Blanc, he's okay. I think his is probably the weakest of the connections for me. He just thinks Chloe's beautiful, and Olivier is his rival. And that's cool. I liked him. I think in FC, that probably would have been like pretty high tier for me for a villain of like pure villain, which even then he's not a pure villain. Because Colonel Richard's a great villain. But some of the like mini villains, the sub villains, were not that great. Blue Blanc is okay, right? Really cool magic, really cool abilities. Walter, Direwolf. Walter's pretty sick. I love Walter's backstory with Zen, with everything with their master and everything that happened there. it seems like Walter lives at the end, I guess, because it seemed like he might have been dead, but he might have been unconscious. But then the whole city blows up. So he probably isn't alive, but possibly could be. So there is that. But Zen gets his closure. He's able to win with the things that his master taught him. We get the full backstory of what happened with their master and Kilika and Walter, and it's very, very good. It's very satisfying. Walter also has a really cool fighting style. I really love his lighting the cigarette in the dark for his S art, his S craft. It's so cool. Um, Luciola. I think Luciola's is really tragic. I think that Luciola's character arc is really good. The problem is, I think Luciola's fights are some of the most annoying in the game because of her two mist demons that she summons, one of whom can heal if you attack him with arts, the other one can heal if you attack him with physical, which makes it really tough to line up your AoE attacks. But I do think from a design-wise, she's super cool. I think from a story-wise, her reveal of like, no, I loved him and he was going to leave, so I killed him, is really solid. That I knew there was something going on there, but I didn't expect it to be that, and that worked. That was really good. Shara being able to try and save her despite it all, and then Luciola just choosing to die anyway. Very, very poignant, very strong. Reen stuff is really good. That fight is really solid, and then Estelle walking up, slapping her, and then hugging her. Yeah, that I want to get into third chapter because I hope that we get our resolution there for that. Because at the end of the game, Estelle and Joshua, one of the things they want to do is try to find Reen. I just want her to be happy, man. She's been used. She's been taught that that's the way she's supposed to live, and she doesn't understand what bonds mean. And hopefully Estelle can get that through to her. Low is really cool. I like that the whole game sets up for his heel turn, because it could be easy to be like, oh, well, they beat Low. Well, he's good now. Okay, I guess. But the whole game's been setting up that he's never actually been happy working for Wiseman. His job, his goal has always been to test humanity's limits, to see if the sacrifice that Karen made was worth anything. And Joshua proves that it is. And then that's good enough. His goal's complete. Now he still has one other goal from way back when, which is protect Joshua. And so he does. And I like that over the course of the entire game, he wasn't attacking extra people. He was doing his best to contain the damage, because it makes the moment where he does heel turn mean more to me. I'm able to more easily go, okay, yeah, just like Colonel Richard, and we're going to talk about Richard in a little bit, because I'm able to go, hey, you did some messed up stuff. It's your fault the trees in Ravenou burned down, but you were just on the wrong path. You didn't purposely go to kill a bunch of people when you could have, so I'm willing to forgive you. And Low winds up being instrumental, just like Colonel Richard in the first game, in them being able to win the fight, which is really cool, I think, the way that all works out. And then finally for villains, I guess we could talk about Gilbert or Campanella. I don't really have much to say about either of them. Gilbert is kind of a joke. Literally, the game's text tells you he's a joke when you fight him. There's a moment here, I have it pulled up. His attacks are junk, but still manage to annoy. So yeah, that's cool. Gilbert, he's a laughingstock the entire game. Campanella, I don't really know much about, really. Campanella kind of just shows up and leaves. We don't get the focus on Campanella that we get with the others. But maybe in the third, who knows? Wiseman. Wiseman is something. I think the big thing for me with Wiseman is that he is convinced that humanity cannot manage on their own. And I don't agree with him, but I understand his reasoning, right? I believe he's wrong, but I get where he's coming from. And it makes the moment where Estelle tells him, no, we can choose for ourselves. We can choose to support each other instead of somebody telling us how we need to live. We can live for ourselves, but not devolve into chaos. We can support one another and build each other up. And you can tell that argument gets to him. He doesn't want to believe that there's another path because he's fully committed to this path he's taken now. And don't get me wrong, he's a scumbag. But I think he's a really good villain. The stuff with him and Joshua is really potent. And he actually wants Estelle to become a member of the society because it really seems like he wants to break that hope in her, that he wants to see it shrivel, and that would bring him actual joy, which again makes him a great villain. I wasn't a huge fan of him becoming a giant monster god thing at the end, but it's a JRPG, so, you know, it's gonna happen. What I was a huge fan of, though, is when Kevin Graham straight up kills him. Kevin Graham turns him into a pillar of salt and straight up kills him. And it's really interesting to me because we have Colonel Richard from the first game, who was a villain, who was doing a lot of bad things, but he was doing these bad things because he truly believed it was what LeBurl needed. And so the moment where he becomes good again, it's believable, right? He's redeemed because, yes, he did a bunch of bad things, but he just wanted to help his country. His goals were in the right place, right? Wiseman, you could not have redeemed Wiseman for me. And so instead of getting the chance to be redeemed, he gets straight up murked by Kevin Graham. And I suppose this is a good time as any to transfer into talking about Kevin Graham. There's so much more I want to say, and we're already almost 30 minutes in. Kevin is a cool new addition to the cast. I was a little concerned at first because it seemed like he was kind of having a thing for Estelle, and Josette's over here kind of having a thing for Joshua. Like, don't you dare steal them away from each other. Don't you do it. But I think that he finds a really cool spot in the story by the end. One thing from the first game that was kind of missing was that tie to the Septian Church, to the Septium faith. You had Julia, but she wasn't playable, you know, and she didn't get a lot of dialogue about it. And even in this game, when she becomes playable, and I want to talk about that, she doesn't get a lot of time to talk about anything like that. So it was interesting getting to see behind the veil, as it were, on the Septium Church and getting to see the Graal's Ritters. And even then, there's a lot we don't know, right? But it was very cool getting to see Kevin. He is a really interesting character, and I want to see more of him. But I was really happy during the times that he would show up. The scene with him and Estelle on top of the wall near Grancel, when the Garuna Gate, I think is which gate that is, when they get the letters from Reen, and they both show up there, and it's like, oh, no. Okay, this is a trap. He figures it out immediately, and it's so cool. I really like Kevin. And I like, too, that he's not portrayed as on the level of the Enforcers, even though he has these sick artifacts that probably could let him fight one for a little bit. Like, he's hiding from Blue Blanc when he's first introduced alongside that, right? When it's revealed that he's more than just a priest. It was really cool to me to see that he wasn't just made out to be like this incredibly strong fighter right away. And speaking of strong, I know I'm talking about characters. I really love the way levels work in this game. So when Joshua rejoins the party, he's way higher level than the rest of you, right? But by the time I'm at endgame, Estelle not only has caught up to him, but so have some of the other party members. So it really feels like you're coming into your own strength-wise. And so when you have Mueller Vander that joins the team and Julia that joins the team, you are now, it's not that they are brought down to your level, it's that you have come up to their level, which is really cool because it's gameplay-wise, it shows that you have reached that tier that these extremely powerful characters are at. Now, you're still not at Cassius's level yet, and you're probably still not at Colonel Richard's level yet, but you're getting there, you know? And if we're going to talk about Julia, and if we're going to talk about Mueller, we have to talk about the fight scene between Julia and Cassius that is one of the coolest, like fight cutscenes in video games, in my opinion. That fight is incredible, especially with the way this art style is done. It looks so sleek and cool. The hits are so fast. That fight scene is great. I wish I had a save that I had left there where I could just go back and watch that fight scene, but I bet it's probably on YouTube. Um, Other things I want to talk about with this game. I haven't gotten into so many other characters. The reveal with Olivier with Mueller, it now makes perfect sense why Mueller's so protective of him. Um, he's a prince. And I worry because I really like him, and I'm afraid he won't be playable in the next one because he's a prince and he's got to go back home. He's got his own battles to fight, you know. But I really like Olivier, and I'm excited to see where his story goes because since he's Erebonian royalty, when I get into Cold Steel, theoretically, he can show up there because that's in Erebonia, right? We'll see. Please don't spoil it for me, comment section, but I'm very excited. Little things, right? Just a couple little things before we get into Estelle's mom and everything there. I mentioned earlier that I had a couple complaints. The biggest one is the fishing side quest for Anton. I missed a rod somewhere where I would have been able to use a different bait, and so I burned through 2 hours of my life and 100 earthworms, basically. I had 20 earthworms that I had gathered. I burned through those without saving because I'm a fool. I'm an idiot. So then I went back and grinded a bunch of mobs to get 10 more, and then I save scummed for 2 hours in an attempt to catch that pearl glass fish for Anton, and failed miserably. And finally just said, okay, I'm going to miss this quest, I guess. I feel like there were some other ones that I missed too, but I wound up being Bracer B+ at the end. Pretty happy with that rank. Probably could have got higher, but, you know, hey, I got more games to play. I got 7 more Trails games to play. I don't have time to be fishing for pearl glass. This is a really small, tiny thing, right? But I have to talk about it. There's a scene where you go to the lake in Bose, right? It's not Valeria. I mean, it is Valeria Lake, but I think that, like, there's a name for that place that you go to, the inn there. I can't remember the name of it right now. But you go to the inn, and when you go in, there's 2 different tables laid out, right? When you have your meeting, they push the tables together, and you can see the seam where the tables connect. And it's so cool to me, because almost any other RPG would have just had one long table there already, because you're going to need it, right? But why would the restaurant only have one long table? That wouldn't make sense. They'd have multiple tables. And so it's just the little attention to detail, man, in this series, in this world. It is incredible. What other small things I want to talk about? Duke Doonan gets a moment in this game. Doonan gets a moment to shine in this game where he just straight up tells them, hey, you all leave and let me handle this because you're more important than I am. And then Philip gets to fight and be super cool. That scene was incredible. The moment where you're flying on the Arceo and you're attempting to get to Liber Arc, and everybody's like, we can do this. It'll be great. And Professor Russell's just like, yeah, you know, if we lose the generator, we crash. No question. Impact would surely kill us all instantly, or the subsequent explosion would. And it's just like, oh, man, I love this character. Professor Russell's so cool. Yeah, no, I adore this game. This game is so good. Agate's backstory is incredible. The stuff with him and Misha. Shara's backstory is really cool. The moments with her and Cassius and Lena and young Estelle are really cool. Joshua's backstory is incredibly sad. The stuff with Hamel and his sister. The moment where you get the full truth of Hamel laid out is the moment where I went, this is why Lowe is working for the organization. This is the test to see if mankind is going to do this again. Because that's an absolute tragedy, right? And the cover-up and everything, it's such a shame that was even perpetrated to begin with. But the moment where Joshua forgives Queen Alicia because she made the promise to cover it up to protect his new home, I almost cried. That scene's really good. Other small things about it, Joshua's name being Joshua Trey when he is off on his own, and then turning back to Joshua Bright after she saves him. Joshua calling Cassius Cassius when he is Joshua Stray, and then calling him Dad again when he's Joshua Bright. The scene where they kiss again, Estelle and Joshua, after, you know, how badly the last kiss went. And then Josette and the other pirates just show up, and it's like, all right, yep, that got interrupted. Which, again, pays off really well in the end. The thematic parallels of the first game ends with a kiss that separates those two characters from most of the second game. And the second game ends with a kiss as they're falling to their dooms. It's really powerful. And of course, they get rescued by Ragnar the dragon that I haven't talked about at all. Ragnar's super cool. He's a really cool dragon. He's got a really cool name. I really like Ragnar. I'm hoping we get more of Ragnar, but at the same time, Ragnar was like, hey, there's going to be more trials coming up, but I can't talk to you about them because we of the scales and wings have rules and laws you wouldn't understand. And it's like, all right, I respect that, Ragnar. I respect that. Estelle's mom, the scene with Estelle's mom and the Mistwald, that's a really powerful scene. And the fact that Estelle plays Joshua's harmonica and that's what is able to pull her out of it, that scene's really good. What other scenes did, like, I'm trying to think of anything else that I haven't talked about yet that I really want to talk about, because there's so much more I could talk about, right? The fact that when your orbments aren't available to be used, or your arts are unable to be used, Tita can't use her gun, can't use any of your arts, and so you have to equip characters with the zero field generators, but you give those zero field generators to the Bracer Guild so they can use their phone, or you can temporarily use them to be able to use orbment factories. It's such a cool level of detail of like, well, yeah, you got these and they're really good, but you have to give them up because you have to give them up. It's important that these phones work. I'm not trying to oversell it, but Chapter 8 of this game, Land of Chaos, is my favorite chapter because of the openness. You can go fully between the areas if you want to. It is complete chaos, but you slowly rebuild from that chaos in a way that I think is really cool. Yeah, this game's great. If you have been spoiled on the entire thing by now, I still think you should play it. I feel like I still haven't done it justice. Like, there's still so much more I could talk about. The stuff with Kurt and how you get Kurt and Annalise on your team for a little while. With Grant and Karna pulling out an old black powder rifle. Heck yeah. There's so much to love about this game. And I think that rushing through it, which is what I almost did, to try and get to the rest of the games would have been one of the biggest mistakes that I will have made in my gaming career if I had done that. Because I'm so glad that even though I'm in a huge hurry, took the time to interact with this game and to do all the side quests that I could, Anton, to just spend time with these characters. And I would be very surprised if the rest of the games will grab me as much as this one did. Because there was a stretch there where I had other projects I was supposed to be working on, and I didn't because I wanted to see where the story went. I wanted to put more time into second chapter. I could just keep going. We're already 40 minutes in. Let me know your thoughts on second chapter in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Trey. This has been the Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum. Trails in the Sky, second chapter, has to offer. Hey, this is Editor Trey, who wasn't planning on editing this video because it was a straight ramble, but who just remembered he didn't talk about the books. There are books in this game, and I love them. So, I got to talk about both these books real quick. I'm going to do a mini review for these books inside the review for the game, and you can't stop me. You cannot. I'm gonna do it. So the first book, right? Okay, Carnelia. I love the story of Sister Cornelia. I think that story is really, really good. It took me about 40 minutes to read through the entire thing, but I like to read multiple times some passages because I'm really enjoying what's happening. I want to make sure that I got everything down and I remembered important words, or more specifically, I remembered phrases so I can use them again later. Uh, it was very good. The way that story ends, where not in really a happy ending, but more of like a hey, she paid her dues, she made it through, and that's what's important, you know? Um, then I was about to start editing, that's why that monitor was on. It's really cool to me the way orbments are like discussed in that book in this game, because gameplay wise it's just, you know, hey, yeah, you fire it off. But in that book it talks about the dangers of using arts so close to yourself, and the main character cuts his leg up really bad, and it's just so interesting to me to see that perspective in a book inside the game. The other book's the one that I'm probably going to talk about for a little bit longer though, and it is The Blue Knight, because this book I found because of the story, right? The game, through doing a side quest with Blue Blanc the Thief, I passed this while combing the city for what the Blue Knight could be in reference to. I found these books, and the story of the Blue Knight is really, really good. I like it a lot. And I honestly think if you don't read these books, you're doing yourself a disservice, because they get referenced. NPCs will reference Sister Carnelia, and Reen references Pedro when she's talking about Pater Mater. It's so cool. I didn't even get into like the technology and how cool a lot of the tech is in this game, and how there's airships that have point defense cannons and full cutscenes, including the airships. We could just go on and on in this review because there's so much in this game that I love. But if nothing else, I strongly recommend when you are playing this game to check out these books, because the story of the Blue Knight, Pedro, and having to come into his own, and even ties in a way to like, well, there's factories, and you know, the 13 factories. Maybe Pedro is a true story. Who knows? It's so cool to see the way that the fiction in this world is represented, and so many games don't have that, right? They don't have fiction inside the fiction, because why would the reader need that, right? But this world is a world. You're inside it. You're a part of it when you're playing it. And so, of course, they would have fiction. And of course, you could read it. And it's what really sells the world building on me for this series. When you get into the data entries on LibreArc and the information that you can glean from there, and everything that's happening there, it's so cool. There's so much to love about this game. And I could just keep rambling on and on, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I've already given the outro. You know what's going on. I'll see all of you in the review for the Trails of Sky the Third.